So as always, as we start off, go nice and easily and gently, particularly anybody watching this who is new. But even more experienced people, it's very easy just to make assumptions about how we're doing and just suddenly realize that you're a little bit tight in your back and you managed to pull a muscle or something like that. So awareness is a key element in Tai Chi all the way through, however long you've been doing this. Awareness of our posture and our movement and how we're feeling is the starting point for that. So give me just rubbing your hands together and with the pads of your fingers, just tapping lightly over your face and just let your jaw loosen a little bit. This is a good way to warm up physically, also to begin to gather your attention in. Working up over your head and neck. I use the palms of my hands here. And then down to one shoulder. See if you can feel the muscles in the shoulder and arm vibrating with striking. Down the inside of your arm, not the outside. And then on the other side. Your arm. There is no special order with this, so if you do practice it at home and you can't remember the order, it's not important. Bring your hands around the lower part of your back, tapping lightly over that lower area of your back. And then going around your hips and your legs. Light on your belly. And onto the upper part of your chest. So just standing comfortably, and you're aware of the sort of subtleties of the Tai Chi postures, have a sense of moving towards that. We'll sort of go into those subtleties as we go through the session, but let's try and understand without having to tighten up in your knees or your hips, bringing your attention to this central area of your body between your hips and your waist, and just turn in there. Quite a small movement to start off with, letting your arms hang down and trying to have a sense of how far you're able to move without resistance. That might not be very far to begin with. As we start to move, we will naturally begin to loosen up a little bit as blood and energy begin to flow a bit more freely through our body. One way of on principle, I suppose you could say one approach to movement that we take in Tai Chi, Qigong, would be to take what you think of as the path of least resistance, like water running down a hill will move around obstructions. It will sort of find the spaces, as it were. And this is a good starting point for us in Tai Chi. We can begin to work on sort of removing blockages and so on. But in the first instance, we want to just generate this sense of movement. The postures that we take in Tai Chi help with that because they help to generate a quality of spaciousness within our bodies. Space for movement, whether that be muscles and joints, which are obviously important. Movements like breathing, circulation, digestion, what we might think of as metabolic movements, and hopefully a growing sense of a sort of underlying movement, a connecting movement. You might think of as the flow, the momentum, the energy of the movement. These are all related, of course, and one of the sort of ongoing aims that we're cultivating in Tai Chi is for all of these movements to blend into one harmonious whole. So it's not purely about a physical response. It's not purely to do with mind. It's not purely to do with energy. But all of these aspects are important and should be seen as being part of a whole, mutually supporting. So the basic posture, if I come forwards a little bit so you can see more easily, trying to have your weight a little bit forwards in your feet and just allowing your hips to drop back very slightly. So it's not a deep bend in knees for this particular posture. A strong sense of droppings through the center of your body, almost like your pelvis is hanging from the spine. And this begins to bring us more into line with the pull of gravity and helps us to drop our center of gravity. And the combination takes away at least some of the need for tightness and stiffness and resistance within our bodies. Obviously, there's all sorts of reasons why that tightness exists, and old habits of movement, old habits of posture will reassert themselves. So we're constantly coming back to this idea. And with time, we begin to recognize that there's a distinctive feel. It can become a bit like putting on a comfortable pair of shoes. You kind of recognize the shape. So there's a technical side to this, but also what we might think of as a more intuitive side. And the feel of the movement can be a good indication. There's a certain rhythm that builds up that I think is probably easier to recognize when we are moving a bit more quickly, but it's there in the slow movements as well. A rhythm that our body begins to resonate. Turning your hands palm forwards, raise them up a little bit. Feel how when you turn in the center of your body, this positions your arms. And so we begin to shift our perspective a little bit, bringing more attention to what's happening in the center of our body, in our legs and in our feet, as the sources of the movement. The movement arises from the ground, if you like to think of it like that. Upper body and arms express that. So when we begin Tai Chi, we have to learn how to look at these movements, and it's always from the ground upwards. Let's your hands drop down. Now, come one foot out, take a short step forward, and again, with this idea of moving from the ground, just think of this as a very gentle push forwards and backwards with your weight landing in the opposite leg each time, and feel how your body turns in response to that. A kind of springy feeling in your legs beginning to build. And this is a very fundamental idea in Tai Chi. Again, movement, we're told, is rooted in our feet, transmitted through our legs. So grounded has a very physical element to it. It's not a metaphorical term. We are literally moving from the ground. And then on the other side. Give your legs a shake. So a little bit more detail on the postures, and again, particularly for newer people, recognize that these are subtle changes but very strong changes. So don't push too hard for these. Just get a sense of what you're aiming for. Our feet are kept hip width apart for the most part, so that our feet can support our hips and our hips can support our shoulders, not too wide or or too narrow. Trying to keep toes pointing forwards, or maybe just a little bit turned out if that's more comfortable for you, but not too far with the turning out. And remember to come back and check this. Because it's very easy to stand, and if you habitually find that your feet turn out more, then after a couple of minutes, you'll probably find that they've migrated out a little bit. And so we're just gently bringing about these corrections and changes. And in that position, just begin to rock your weight forwards and backwards. Some of you will have done this exercise with me many times, but it's not an exercise that we do and then forget about. It's a process of recognizing how our bodies are relating to the pull of gravity downwards. If I go a long way back, then I'm going to start wobbling around and straining. Likewise, if I go too far forwards. So looking for some kind of central point, some kind of point of equilibrium where gravity pulls our weight down into our body. And again, some of you will have an idea of where that could be, the kind of official point, but don't necessarily expect to be there at the moment. Again, we're still kind of warming up and preparing, and there's a number of different factors that influence this. If you're a bit stiff in your back today, for instance, it might not be in that official position. So think about how this feels, be aware of how this feels, and just let yourself come to rest, like a ball rolling along the ground, sort of that doesn't stop dead, but kind of rocks to a halt. So everything just coming to a gentle halt, and again, trying to just let your hips drop back. So a slight curve in your knee, giving you this feeling of dropping down. And we're going to build on that. The rooting down means that we become more stable and carry less weight in the upper part of the body. Again, this contributes to this feeling of spaciousness that allows for the movement. So without straining in your knees, without overdoing this, let your hips drop back just a little bit more. You'll feel the pressure in your legs building, and then before it becomes a strain, push up to the top position. And again, letting gravity draw your hips back, down, and then push it up. Try and let this settle into a nice steady rhythm. Remember, this is not a competition, nor is it simply about how far you bend your knees. Don't bend them too far because you'll end up straining in your legs. That doesn't help. Beginning to focus on this internal sensation of dropping down and pushing up. So rooting down has a physical aspect to it, this lowering of our center of gravity, leading to improved stability, less weight particularly on our back and on shoulders and the front of our upper body. But it is also a movement downwards that leads to a push up. So you're standing on a trampoline or a bouncy castle. This downward and upward cycle represents one of the most important cycles of movement, cycles of energy for us in Tai Chi and Qigong. It's a constant thing in all the movements. We're not necessarily always going up and down like this, but gravity is always there, and there's always a response on the ground from our bodies. So there's always a downward and an upward movement to work with. Now bringing your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, and this time as you push up, that upward movement, pushing your elbows out, drawing your hands up, rotate them so that they're resting on a ball, and drop your hips, shoulders and arms forward. Push up. Take your time. Don't rush the change over from expansion to contraction. Recognize these interim stages when our arms rotate. breathing just come in whatever way or form is comfortable for you. You may find that your breathing just quite naturally harmonizes with the rest of the movement. If it doesn't, then just try and just release some of the tightness in your chest, your upper back, shoulders. But don't spend too much time focusing on your breathing. Come back to it every now and then. Feeling that smoothness of movement. One of the images that we commonly use to forge this link between mind and body is that we're moving through water. So there was just this slight sense of resistance in the air around us that encourages both a flowing quality, but also a stronger quality of movement. When we move in water, we quite instinctively loosen off in our joints a little bit. That makes muscle and tendon and ligament, fascia work a little bit harder, but also helps to maintain that sense of space for movement within the body. Another description, another image used is that it's as though your whole body's being massaged by them, or sometimes bathed by them. These images can help us to just generate the appropriate feel of the mood, whichever image works for you. This time, your hands come down towards your hips, turn them so your fingers point out. The next expansion, pushing your arms away from the body. Notice my elbows hanging down and then dropping down, hands coming back to a point in line with your hips. This is the exercise, the wild goose. So this has a more specific image. The image of moving through water or the massaging or the bathing feeling is really common to all of the movements, but quite often the movements will have their own particular images, their own particular resonances. But again, if an image doesn't work for you, don't feel that you failed. Different images will mean different things to us at different times. And if an image isn't working for you, then don't labor after it. The images are there in the service of the movement, not the other way around. But it can be interesting to observe how our bodies respond to imagery. This time, letting your hands drop down, cross in front of your belly, pushing up, elbows coming out again, drawing your fingers around in a smooth circle. This is parting the clouds. This has an implication of a sort of expansive quality, perhaps. Once again, notice the changeover from expansion, yang, to contraction, yin, and then back to yang. Not hurrying those moments. We can often find ourselves beginning to rush at that point. And it starts to feel as though we're running downhill. So just recognizing these little moments where the movement just briefly punctuated, like putting a comma in a sentence. To reinforce that idea a little bit, this time as your hands come down, bend your elbows, curving your hands under, and again as though you're pushing the ball up, pressing down, that first exercise, rooting down. At the bottom of the movement, turning your fingers out, going into the wild goose. And from the wild goose back into parting the cloud. So a little 3-part sequence, not rushing. And just using those moments of change from one movement to another, from one stage of one movement to another, to just allow things to settle for a very brief moment. This becomes an integral part of the movement. To quote the old writings associated with Tai Chi, we seek the stillness within the movement. Maybe just beginning to recognize the changeover and the contrast from one movement to another. As I said earlier, there's common feeling between all of the movements, but also each movement will have its own unique resonance, patterns of movement within your body. And one of the progressions in Tai Chi and Qigong is just increasingly recognizing those subtle changes within the body and bringing a sense of intentionality to them. These are areas where we're most likely to bring some kind of connection between mind and body. They become the building blocks of the bigger movements. One more round of this. This time letting your hands drop down to their full length by the side of your body. And as you push up, focusing on the expansion on one side, pushing your arm up, winding around as though you're plucking something from the tree. Pull down. Bring your attention to the center of your body in that feeling, dropping towards the ground, and then push up on the other side. Wind around. This is called Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. Once again, at the end of the movement, bringing your attention to the center of your body and the ground, and then push it up. So again, that sense of the movement being punctuated very briefly by this quality of stillness, a gathered quality. The ideal would be that we never lose that. In practice, we often do, but we can learn to bring our attention back on a regular basis. As you make these different movements again, keep a sense of what's happening within your body, noticing those small changes, but also aware perhaps of areas that feel a bit tight or a bit blocked. Don't dwell too much on those, but you can have an intention to get a feeling what we might call releasing or softening in those areas. You might have an intention to let that bathing quality in the movement wash over those areas, to kind of gently dissolve them away. One more time. Let your hands drop down, just resting at your sides. And come again to this standing position, hip, not a low position, hips just dropping back a little bit. Shoulders in line with hips as much as possible. And try and get a feeling of your head just resting gently on the top of your shoulders. Shake out. So our awareness of posture and our awareness of movement is cultivated through doing the movements and through being aware of the postures. Mind and body interacting with each other, a more gathered attention means we become more aware of what's happening in the body, and that awareness encourages a further gathering, and with that gathering comes this deep sense of calm that is associated with the movements. And in addition to that, we have a third element of the movement itself, the energy. And these three elements interacting with each other. They're again, they're three aspects of a whole. For the next two exercises, we're not going to go up and down, but we are going to try and get this feeling of our hips dropping back. So still allowing that sense of the pull of gravity downwards through our body and feeling the response upwards through our body. So we have this sort of very subtle cycle of movement, of energy working through the body. Bringing your hands to a point adjacent to the center of the body. See if you can just lightly touch with the inside of your arm, your hips, and then feeling an expansion building from this central part of the body, pushing down towards the ground like a ball expanding, but pushing your arms up. Just turn your hands palm up as though you're pressing them against the low ceiling, and then down, coming back to that starting position. And once again, just a moment of settling in to the center of your body, into the ground beneath you, and then pushing out sideways and back. So the end of the contracting stages of the movement are generally good moments to recenter yourself, to reground yourself, to gather just very briefly. But they're not the only moments. People with a little bit more experience, at the end of the extending yang stage, we have the same potential. And eventually, as I've mentioned before, one of our kind of long-term aspirations would be that quality of stillness, that grounded center quality, is maintained all the time. This time, as you push out sideways, turning just a little in your hips, noticing again how when we do that, it affects our arms, it affects the direction of movement in our arms. Turning the other way and back, and then facing forwards and pushing out. So 4 stages, pushing in 4 directions. Coming back to the center, feeling the center dropping towards the ground, expanding out. Nice and easy and gentle. Again, as though you're moving through water, perhaps is a useful image. Or as you push out sideways and turn, maybe imagining stretching out an elastic band between your hands and then just allowing it to slowly contract. Noticing whether there is this urge to rush, which is a very common. I think this is something that we all experience, fast-moving world. So focusing on those moments of stillness actually helps to take some of the sting out of that urge to rush. good to remind ourselves of that central location in our bodies and the feeling of it dropping towards the ground. Again, mentioned earlier, this change of perspective. But for much of our lives, the majority of our attention is on our upper body, and particularly our arms and our hands. So there's a tricky sort of readjustment that starts to take place. Last time, pushing out, bringing your hands back in, dropping down again. And again, focusing on one side, this time letting the movement push your arm out, drawing your fingers back a little bit so your palm faces out. Letting your arm swing up until it's in line with your nose and straight down this center line of your body. And you're describing the half circle, the exercise is called circling pulse. Time, try not to rush, and we may find that we try and hurry the contracting stage. Maybe push a little bit harder, a little bit too hard on the expansion. This time, when your hand reaches top position, return just a little bit again, and noticing the effect that has on our arm and hand. Remember, try and settle your weight, if possible, a little bit forwards in your feet, allowing your hips to drop back, soft in your hips and your knees, try not to tighten any of your joints. And then changing sides. Noticing if there's any difference between one side of your body and another, which there often is. And again, we might bring images of moving through water, or that massaging or bathing feeling, particularly to those areas that feel a bit reluctant to move. And then in the top position, turning. One more time. And once again, standing. So those two exercises show how the center of our body really moves our arms horizontally. So I mentioned earlier the saying, rooted in our feet, transmitted through our legs. The next line goes that the movement is guided or directed or controlled from the center of the body. And finally, expressed through our upper body and arms. So there's this progressive movement. Again, in this standing position, this time, just push your hips back and your pelvis will tilt. Dropping down just a little bit in the knees, the legs, coming back to the upright position. Coming back, not by straining in our backs or our shoulders, but once again, letting gravity pull our hips down. So we start to come up nice and easy and smooth. And once again, we can feel the significance of that central part of the body. Not only does it influence us with its horizontal movements, but here with its vertical rotations. And we're going to use this, the next two exercises. They're both quite strong exercises that I'll try and demonstrate quite big, but only move as far as you're comfortable. They don't have to be big movements. So first one, sinking down just a little bit. And as you push up, your arms being pushed out. And then as you sink down again, your hips going back, and that will bring your head and shoulders and your arms forward. Just very carefully with your back here. Let your hips drop down and settle in and push up again. This is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. A gentle extension through back and spine here. Don't overdo this. And focus on this idea of coming up nice and easily and gently, as though your head were floating up. Remind yourself of this flowing movement, massaging, bathing. Try and have that as a constant intention, rather than feeling that you have to stretch and strain for the movement. Try and have a sense of how far it's appropriate for your body to move, but still having that space within the body, as though you could have moved a little bit further. That way you help to maintain that sense of internal movement. Do one more of these. As you come to the upright position, let your hands rest in front of your belly, palm down, turn, and then push your hips back, swinging your hips across, drop down and turn back to the front. And then turn in the other way, push back, swing around, drop down, and back. It's called polishing the table. So you can see how my hips are moving again. I'm exaggerating the movement. Hips go back, swing across, coming up to the upright position, turning to the front. That moment of settling in and then turning the other way. Not straining in your back, your shoulders. And again, feeling as though you could have moved a little bit further. So we're maintaining and cultivating that space for the movements within the body. And encouraging those movements to work in a very fluid, harmonious way. So if we go too far, we stiffen up, we'll lose that sense of harmony. One more time. Polishing the table. And then your hands back. Once again, changing the stance to the forward stance, the bow stance as it's sometimes referred to. As you stand with your feet hip width apart, imagine these imaginary lines going through the floor, like tram lines as they're sometimes referred to. Turn one foot out. And I would recommend just playing about with this angle a bit until it's comfortable, and then step straight forward with the other foot, toes pointing forward. Notice you can see the background between my legs, and just beginning to transfer your weight forwards and backwards again. People with more experience, remember you're trying to keep facing forwards at this point. If you are slightly out, be careful how you make any correction. You don't want to twist your back or your knees up. And in the end, it's better to be slightly off in the upper body and not strain your knees. So you can always look at some point about how we make these corrections. But once again, nothing should be forced. All of these aspects of Tai Chi are cultivated. I like the word cultivated. If you think about growing a plant, you kind of nurture that plant, you create the environment in which that plant flourishes. And this is what we're trying to do, to create an environment in mind and body that allows for that movement, allows for that flow of energy. And it's an ongoing process. This is not a quick process, and it's hampered by forcing too hard. So what we're doing now is feeling that push from the ground that we felt before, but directing it into one foot. People with more experience remember the ratios that when you're on your back leg, 70% of your weight is in the back leg. When you go forwards, a little bit less, 60%. Trying to be very clear on where you want the weight to go. Maintaining your posture as much as possible. If you watch how I do this, my arm is hanging down from my shoulder to my hip. What I don't want to do is to lean forwards. Now I've lost that alignment. You can see my arms now somewhere else, or indeed lean backwards. And recognize that we often have this tendency. It's a very natural, common, actually quite useful habit that, you know, if we were doing everyday walking here, if we were walking along the road, we might angle forward slightly, and that would send our center of gravity forwards. And that's movement of the center of gravity would help us to move. But in this exercise, what we're trying to do is to maintain the alignment of the body. We want our center of gravity to drop down into our supporting leg. Now, moving your weight into your back foot, raise the front toes and just feel how you shift back slightly. Now you can have the front foot turned out if you haven't already. Go forwards, push the back knee in so your heel comes up. And as we do this, again, recognize how when our toes come up, when our heels come up, there's this slight shift. So now we're looking for this quality of alignment, rooting down, this gathered quality, not over two legs, but over one leg. This the term I like to use for the sort of a kind of umbrella term for all these different aspects is central equilibrium, quality of mind, body, and energy that is literally central to Tai Chi. You could argue that everything we do in Tai Chi is about trying to maintain central equilibrium. So now we're looking to feel that over one leg, and this time go into your back foot, draw the front foot in, step out, put your heel down, lower the ball of your foot, gently press the foot into the floor. Forwards, raise the heel, bring the foot in. When you step back, it's going to be the ball of your foot go down first, then the heel, then the pressing in. This is referred to as planting the foot. When we press in, we plant the foot. Again, a kind of reference to growing a plant, to cultivation. Try not to stiffen up. Get a feeling, give yourself time to let your center of gravity to drop. This is where the stability comes from. Shake out. Try that with your other foot forward. So start with your feet parallel and imagine the tram lines. Turn one foot out, step forward with the foot that previously was behind. Transferring your weight. Try not to straighten, to lock up your knees. I come a little bit closer. The image will be slightly distorted, but you see when I'm on the front leg, obviously that knee's a little bit bent, but this knee also, I don't want this knee to straighten up. You see how it throws my posture out when I do that. Likewise, I don't want the back knee to straighten out because it pushes up into my body. It's also very bad for your knees to do that, because your knees then start to feel the weight of your body. And we want a sense of our weight flowing downwards through joints like our knees, rather than knees becoming structures that are weight bearing, which they're not meant to be. raising toes and heel. This requires significant conditioning for our legs. So again, this is an ongoing process in Tai Chi. Stepping in and then out, having placed the foot, you plant. You have time to settle in. This is not a race. And then either going forwards or backwards, depending on where you've got the space. Bring one foot in, swing it out back to hip width, trying to maintain a stance. Think of walking on thin ice. And what you want to do is you extend the foot and then you press in gently to test the ice before you commit your weight. So this would be a shorter than normal step for most of us. I'm going to change direction now. And doing nothing. Then we're going to use these movements, bringing the upper body back into the whole process. So have your right foot forwards. So mirror my movements. Start with your weight in your back foot and fold your hands over your belly. Push forwards and again, just feeling this wave-like movement arising from the ground, working through your body, going into the other leg. And this time get a sense of it coming up into your upper body and starting with your weight in your back foot as you push forwards, feeling the expansion of that wave in belly, solar plexus and chest, just pushing your arms out, separating your fingers, and then as you come back, drawing them back. This is called pigeon spreads its wings. Lovely feeling of a gentle expansion upwards through your body, draining down into the ground again. Again, bringing images, moving through water, bathing, massaging. Again, you could imagine having that elastic band between your wrists and just pushing your arms out. Some of these images help with this cultivation of a more resilient quality in both body and energy. It's sometimes referred to as internal strength in Tai Chi. We can begin to appreciate that for its value to our well-being. But trying not to strain, particularly trying not to strain in big muscles like your biceps and triceps. You want to try and actively disengage those a little bit so that tendon, ligament, postural muscle, and fascia all begin to engage in the movement alongside those bigger muscles. Now let your hands drop down. Going forwards, your arms held behind just a little bit and then swinging through. This is called fisherman castanet. If you're in water, as you push forwards, the tendency would be for your arms to float behind. And it's really not until your weight settles in the front leg or the back leg that they swing through just a little bit. With a very gentle, natural curving quality. Again, that wave-like flow through the whole. And again, just trying to get a sense within your body of the to the internal patterns of movement, of expansion and contraction, soft tissue of your body, flow of the movement, the energy through your body. It's a very simple exercise, really helps us to develop that ability to see these qualities developing within the body, which is the first stage, of course, towards being able to work creatively with them. You can't seek to change things, you can't seek to cultivate things if you're not aware of them in the first place. Now this time, as your arms begin to swing out and you're on the front leg, turn so that your arms are redirected once again. Dropping back, letting your arms drop down, contracting, settle into your back foot, turn, let the arms swing out. This is called Wind Blows the Willows. Willow tree is another common image in these arts. Willow tree has deep roots and a very strong but very supple wood. So the willow tree will bend in a wind that would knock other trees over and then spring back. So much, a much admired image, idea. Wind blows the willows, combining the transfer of your weight, turning in your center, patterning of expansion and contraction into one fluid movement. And then bring things back. Shake it. Those three movements on the other side. So turning your right foot out, step forward with the left foot, making sure you've got the width of the step. Sink your weight back, hold your hands over your belly, pushing forwards, feeling that wave-like movement expanding, pushing your arms out. Pigeon spreads its wings. And look to stiffen up in your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, thumb and fingers. Not losing that sense of connection to the ground through your feet, the transfer of your weight and through the feeling of your center of gravity sinking. Seeing if you can just bring those, what can sometimes feel like two separate windows of awareness of upper and lower body, into one homogeneous whole. Letting your hands drop down, making the change to fisherman cast the net. Being careful not to overextend your arms. And not stiffening up in any of the joints of your body, be they legs or arms or your back and spine. Time as you go into your front leg and settle in, turning to your right, turning away from the leg, guiding your arms through. Wind blows the willows. And we're going to settle into your leg. Don't get so caught up in movements of the upper body, you lose that connection to the ground. This time, when you go into your front leg, as you turn, push your back knee in. Unless you're going backwards, you could do this going backwards, but try and go forwards if you can. Bring the foot in, just settle for a moment. How does this feel? Do you have that sense of alignment over your supporting leg? And then step through, place the foot and plant, move the weight forwards, dropping your hands down, turning, bringing the foot in, taking a moment to check. Do you still feel that sense of equilibrium? And step through. This is called dragonfly skims the water. As you bring your foot in, again, feeling your hips, dropping back, try not to stiffen up in your shoulders. Notice that my elbows are hanging down, so I'm not stiff here. Changing direction, planting the foot. You may start to find that the turning in the center of your body actually helps to move not just your arms, but your feet and your legs as well. Then we're going to do this again. So this time, if it's comfortable for you, having brought the foot in, can you just raise the knee and rotate your hip a little bit? If you find that you're too wobbly doing that, it can be quite tricky, then just leave it out to keep the foot down. The raising of your leg is counterbalanced, neutralized by your hips dropping back. So try not to stiffen up. Try not to stiffen up in your shoulders or your arms. Once again, I'm going to change direction. And then, once again, boom. So all of these qualities that are summed up by this term central equilibrium, the Chinese term is zhongding, stillness, the gathered quality in our minds, the rooting down, the physical aspects of the posture and the outcome, which is this space for movement within the body. They're all long-term aims in Tai Chi. And it's a quality that we can benefit when we can take from when we take it into our daily lives. But there are also qualities that are so easily lost. You know, we can find ourselves standing in the queue at the shop or waiting for the bus at the bus stop or in a traffic jam, becoming agitated in this the situation. And you know, we must recognize that everybody loses this. And so one of the things that I take away from Tai Chi, and one thing that I think is really important, is if you remember those moments when we recovered that sense of stillness, the point of change from one movement to another, that moment of an awareness of the ground beneath our feet. These little moments that we might call moments of stillness, moments of gathering, accelerate that process of agitation. So the last exercise, I think, is a good one to leave on, because I think it emphasizes this, and perhaps gives us an opportunity to really focus on that experience of returning. It's called Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain. And one thing we can do is perhaps note what for ourselves works for us in this context. What would you like what would you like to think of when you're standing waiting for the bus and it's 20 minutes late and you're starting to get annoyed because it looks as though you're going to be late? What would be most helpful for you at that point? What would be the best thing to think of just to take the sting out of that agitation? So letting your hips drop down again, pushing up a little bit like the wild goose, but this time at the top of the movement, bring your arms around as though you're holding a ball against your chest. Drawing in, turn your hands palm down, let your hips drop, your shoulders follow, and your arms follow your shoulders. Embrace Tiger, return to the mountain. And at the end of each cycle, once again, just that little moment of settling in, enjoying being on the mountain before you move out again. One more time. And thank you very much for watching and joining in, everybody. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me, or any comments you wish to make, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.